Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I'm joined today by Kent Dueck of the Intercity Youth Alive. And today was a big day, Kent. You announced a movie that will be premiering here in Manitoba on October 1st called Absenteeism. Is that right? Absenteeism?
It's called Absent.
Yeah. Thank you for correcting me on that. Tell me about this.
Yeah, well, Absent is really sort of the culmination of 9 years of work and worry. 9 years ago, Sel Burrows and I brought up the issue of student absenteeism, and it kind of brought it into the public light. And since then, we've been working away at it. We have, during the Conservative government, we had a task force that was mandated to address this issue, and we produced a marketing campaign, a research piece, and words on paper, and very little by way of action and results. And so somewhere in the middle of all that, I felt burdened with, our organization, we like to get things done. And so I started to go out and look for private funding to launch something that would reach kids that were absent from school. And so we launched Engage Education right in the middle there somewhere, because I thought, while you're working, you should be doing sort of action research. You should be trying things and seeing what works and what sticks, and revamping your plan. And so while everybody was talking about it, we decided to step out and take some action. So if you can just bump ahead, we had the election, we had the new government that came in, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to kind of get their legs under them. But we brought this issue. We're not going to be quiet about this issue. But at the beginning, we gave them a little bit of kind of reprieve, and we stayed quiet in the media for about a year and a half. And of course, when I say we, Sel Burrows, as you may or may not know, we've been working kind of in tandem on this, and so we got to the point where we feel that there's so little action, and there's and things are as bad as or worse than they've been. And so we said, so Kevin, one of the challenges has been that that Winnipeg won, and the province tends to obfuscate and try to put something else that's shiny out in front.
So I just want to stop you for a second there, Kent.
Yeah, sure.
Know what we're talking about. You're talking about Winnipeg School Division 1?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Winnipeg School Division number 1. That we'll hear maybe some words, or some kind of sort of push us back to say it's not as bad as you say it is, or we got this. That was a recurring theme on the task force: is everything's fine, we've got this in hand. And then they would tout a program that they were doing that was supposedly having an impact, but we knew too much. So you couldn't really trifle with us, because we hear in the community what's actually happening.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about that? What's actually happening? I mean, I can quote some numbers, but I'd rather you talk about them, because it's stunning. It's stunning to see what we have put out and what you have put out as numbers, and I think people would want to know this.
Yeah, well, on the numbers, it's the old I can neither deny nor confirm kind of a dynamic, because there's been so much hiding the numbers. And but what basically is happening is that schools will be registering their numbers, and they'll be getting $15,905 per student as of last year. The number might have changed by a few dollars, but each student, they'll be getting $15,905 each student, and so that's what they base their funding on the year for. So then often schools will have an event on the day that funding lands, a pizza party, whatever, obvious strategy to attract students to attend. And again, I just want to be really generous with schools, because I think that teachers and principals are trying their best. They're trying to make it work. But what happens is then come October, there starts to be a bit of attrition. And then built into the system is an acceptance of that attrition. So although some efforts take place to reach out, there's no way that a teacher who has, maybe had 24 students and now they're down to 12, still has 12 students to teach. So they do not have the capacity to go out there and reach those students. So then by Christmas, you'll see that downturn. And in the documentary, we cite numbers of 71%, and that's by spring break. You've lost that many students by spring break. Nothing has changed with your funding. You still have your full complement of staff, and so that's kind of how it happens throughout the year. And it's kind of a slow decline. And by the end of the year, it's class sizes are. One teacher told me after spring break, our school is a ghost town.
Wow.
And I'm just quoting what I've heard.
Well, I'm
We
looking at
have,
another quote that you've got from. I'm guessing that this is from the film itself, where a North End school administrator, this is in Winnipeg, Manitoba, said if we have 50% of our students attending school by spring, we say that's a success.
yeah,
And there's
that's a
another
fact.
one that one of the teachers that said that he was happy that 12 students from our class of 24 had dropped out because now they have 12 students who are committed. I mean, these are staggering numbers.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I know um, I've been working at this, and because you kind of have to work the edges, initially I thought it was about 20%. And because I was told that if it goes higher than 19%, then the province is notified. But then somebody kind of whisper campaign came to me and said, you know what that's about? And I was like, no. Well, it has to do with if it goes past 19% to 20%, the province is notified because they think maybe there's a pandemic or something going through the school. So the reality is that if it goes past 20%, I thought so. So at one point, uh, I had held up the idea that it's about 37%. And that again was based on information that I got from the community, from people that are talking to me. And that I brought that out into the light and said, I think it's as high as 37%. Well, people couldn't believe it. But the truth is it's much worse than that. And it's also, to be really clear, Kevin, it's very specific. So there's schools that have a high concentration of the problem. So if you like initially when the data came out under the new government, the data was washed into the entire Winnipeg one. So then that could mean that if you have a school that has a 4% absenteeism rate, and that's going to offset if there's another school that has a 50% absenteeism rate. So it was a way to kind of wash the data so that we couldn't see the specifics of the problem. And if you know anything about problem solving processes, if you don't define the problem perfectly, you cannot solve the problem.
Right.
And so the problem statement, I guess you would say, was that absenteeism is around 18 to 20%. But the reality is, no, the concentration of the problem is within a specific set of schools that struggle, and they can have high absenteeism rates.
So
And we
I'm not
have
going to
to,
ask you for facts, but I want to know from like I mean, you said you started this when the Conservatives were in government, and it's now carried on through the NDP that are in government. Is the government, and listen, I want people that are watching this to understand something in Manitoba. It's very unique to Manitoba. If you bring out something that the government's been trying to keep quiet, or if you challenge their numbers and you have data to back it up, or you have facts to back it up, you become a bit of a target. And I don't want that to happen to you, Kent. I think what you have done with this is brilliant. I think you're going to help thousands upon thousands of kids because it has to become something we're focused on. But you were part of a team that was put together to look at this and to come up with some ideas. What was the response from the government? You don't have to mention which one, just from the government in general, because these are people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars that all stand on a soapbox and say we have to address the core root of the problems that we have in society, and it starts at school.
yeah, I mean, I guess the response has been sort of varied. but mostly um, um, there's kind of a belief within education that the answers are within us, and so also just a real weakness at reading the cues. So if something isn't working, then they can kind of do a word game and move it around so that it somehow looks like it's working. There's this idea that any social effort is a success by sufficiently low standard,
It's
if
a
you
shell
follow me.
game. It's a shell game.
Yeah, yeah, and so we'll have again. I think at base, I want to believe that everybody wants kids to be able to engage in school. I think all of the ministers, deputy ministers that have sat in that chair, and sadly, there's quite a turnover, but they've all wanted to do better and do well by the kids. But I don't think they know how to, and I don't either think that our people, our politicians, are very good at admitting they don't know what to do. And I feel that's critical. I know when we started our initiative here, I I told my staff, go ahead and fail, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, admit that, I told them this is no one's tried this. It's impossible. We don't have any model to base it on, but I want us to go out there and try. And so, we've made lots of mistakes in our efforts, but we learn as we go. But at first, you have to admit that we're failing, that we don't know how to do this.
But
And I
you
think
said that off the
that's,
top, and you're
yeah,
absolutely right. I was in politics, I was in civic politics, I was in provincial politics, and I can tell you, very nice people in politics. I'm not, saying anything about about who they are, or some of them I'm very good friends with, but they don't. You're right. They don't want to ever admit they don't know how to fix something, when the reality is we don't. We really don't. I mean, everyone has a skill and has something that they're good at, but you're not good at everything. And if you're, you come from a job where you're a youth counselor at one of the detention facilities, that doesn't make you an expert on building and planning and development, or on budgeting, for goodness sakes. It makes you an expert on how to deal with youth in that particular situation, and that's respectful. But we need to have politicians that start stepping back saying, I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to put in the time, the effort, and the money to find the answers to make this different. Would you agree?
yeah. And I think that as a society, we'd be willing to wait. We'd be willing to walk with people who could honestly admit that I don't know what to do here, and we're going to find out. But I think, yeah, that's the line I've used for, I guess, close to 9 years straight now. That I'm imploring everyone: honesty with impunity, because you can tell that the weight of telling the truth is too much for many politicians, many educators. I mean, especially since this is kind of an open secret. Like educators in our community know that schools go into decline, and I'm sure they care about it, but the cost of saying we are losing students is too high. And
But it's not really losing students. You're losing a human being. Like when they're not in school and they're not engaged in the camaraderie of school that school can create, or anything like that, to me, you're losing that person. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, but I'm sure that a lot of these statistics we have on absenteeism probably falls more heavy on the Indigenous community, that
yeah,
need a little extra attention, that need a little bit of extra support, that the government, both federally and provincially, are sorely missing. And I look at it this way, Kent. Like, I came from a very humble family. We were living below the poverty line, and I knew at grade 9, grade 10, university wasn't for me, which made me take school a different way. But luckily I got through it, and then decided, later in life, to get there and take that education. But not everybody has that opportunity or that will. So by grade 9 or grade 10 or whatever it might be, if you feel like you're worthless or you're not going to achieve anything, then we've lost that person, and we're at fault for that, is my thought. We're at fault for that.
yeah, Kevin, thanks for humanizing. You're right. These are students, but they have names. And particularly, I think of Tina Fontaine. I have that report right on my desk, and It's something I read with care, but one of the lines in there is that we lost Tina first at school. And so you're right about how schools have an anchoring effect and how they create a sense of community and connection. And and uh, and so part of the discussion then, it is particularly our Indigenous friends who are struggling in the area of education, and part of the discussion has to involve, okay, there's a history. Residential schools play into this, and the history of what happened there factors in. At the same time, we have to remain focused on the individual kids that are in front of us and the potential within them, so that you deal with kind of the trauma that's associated maybe with education, but you also you keep pressing kids towards what's possible.
I certainly accept the fact about the residential schools and that, but really, all we seem to be doing then is making excuses for these kids. We're not helping them. And again, you're right. These are individuals. These are human beings. These are people that want to have a good quality of life, that want to move on, that want to be hang out with their friends. I don't think any of them wake up in the morning saying, no, I don't want to go to school. I'm going to go get involved with a gang or whatever. And I really do believe that wholeheartedly. We can't be making excuses for this anymore. Not paying it, saying it's not a reality, not saying that there's impacts there. But why aren't we focusing more of our attention not on blame, but more of our attention on a solution for these kids?
Well, I think that the way you hold the story of history helps with the solution. So if you're saying, okay, we have to remember that there's another obstacle. Sometimes you can't see it, but it's sort of hidden. It's hidden there, but it's in plain view. That the history. So as a helper, you have to have that in mind. But then again, uh, the path to a better life goes right through the school halls. You have to graduate. And so, to your point, we can't allow that story of history to get in the way of us helping kids to get through their education. And so we can hold it in mind, but we have to still call people to it. And yeah, and the thing is, you're right about kids don't wake up to say, hey, I just want to screw my life up. I want to forget about school, join a gang, and be done with it. No, kids have aspirations, and that was one of the exciting things that came out in the documentary, is to hear the heart of some of the kids in our community who struggle and share that I know I should be in school. I know I should be engaging with it, but the burden that I carry at home is just overwhelming. And so you hear that, and it gives you empathy for what these kids are going through, and yeah, hopefully motivates us to try to make some changes.
Now, the premiere is October 1st. Do you see this going across Canada? Do you see this? It'd be nice if one of the streaming channels picked it up. And I think this is something people that we have to watch. I think we're required. This should be required watching. We should be back in school ourselves to listen to it, because I would love to hear what some of these students are saying that you interviewed. I think that that's where we need to be focusing our attention. I'm not an educational expert. I'm really not.
Right.
And I don't pretend to be. But I know what it's like to feel like school is not for you, that nothing's going to happen, right? You're not going to strive to all these bigger things that everybody else is trying to strive to and have the means to do. But I mean, these are important human beings in our life. This is the future of our country. And
Yeah, and
we
and
can't
you
invest in
make
them. Phew.
yeah, you make a really key point. Um, so in our works here through our Engage Education, the program that we've initiated, we kind of thought, okay, we're working alone. We're a voice in the desert. Kind of, we're trying to. No one's going to help us, and we just have to figure this out. But amazingly, on a flight to BC one time, I sat beside an Indigenous woman who had come from a conference on Indigenous education. I said, "Well, what was it about?" She said, "Well, one of the main themes was absenteeism." And so we immediately formed this connection and bond, and we started talking. Then recently talked to a teacher that's running a school out of Saskatoon, who said same challenges, absenteeism. And so yeah, your vision for, is this a national kind of a conversation? It needs to be heard widely, and and although it's we feel it kind of acutely in our community, and it's super personal, and it's when we get in close and we see, if I can just tell you a story about one of the kids we worked with, her kukum and mushim came and talked to us and said, our granddaughter hasn't gone to school in 2 years. She'll barely leave her room, and so would you help? And so after the meeting, my staff went straight to this girl's room. They start talking through the door. Then eventually she'll open the door. Eventually we get that young lady out for to have a meal, and then we start to do some life planning. And this year she's registered in school and attending full time. So you're like, my passion comes from, like, we're an inch away from incredible here. If we can just get Winnipeg One to say we're going to rethink how we do this funding, and actually reach out in ways that our staff go to great lengths to reach kids, and we're getting a 73% success rate at reaching kids who have been out of school, and so it's a matter of just
So I'm sorry, you get a 76% success rate in reaching out to kids that aren't going to school?
73% success rate.
73%.
If I can just tell you, to give you a sense of of how hard this has been, Kevin, when we started 3 years ago, 60% of the kids that we reached we concluded were unreachable. So I said, okay, work with the 40%. Then of that 40%, we were getting about a 40% success rate. In year two, using sort of action research, trying things, changing things, flipping things around, nothing is sacred. We want to innovate to make this happen. In year two, we flipped it. Now 40% of the kids are unreachable, and we were able to reach about 60% of that 60% that we could reach. And now at this last year, we were hitting 73%, and we're getting more like a 70% of the kids were willing. So, one of the things the documentary does is it looks at a case study in one school where you have 250 kids missing. That's 3.9 million. That's 65 staff you could hire at a pretty reasonable salary to do outreach. Obviously, we're not proposing that's the case. That's what we should do. We're saying that if you have 250 students missing, one staff can reach 25 students. So it's very reachable. Like if you have, I should know the math here. If you have 10, 12 staff doing outreach, you should be able to reach those kids.
So why
And
why wouldn't you think the government would invest in that? I mean, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on administrative salaries. We have all these different school boards. I think there's some superintendents in schools that make over $200,000, and then you've got school trustees. So you have several of them that are making money for being a school trustee and really not engaged in this process, obviously, or the issue would
right.
be addressed. I think it's all about, this is just my humble opinion, is that we need to advocate to say, look, you need to reallocate some of these financial resources that you're throwing at schools to bring kids to school, to do these outreach people. I think I see that as an investment, because I see that as a return that we will see down the road, right? Because you'll have less of these kids turning to crime. You'll have them much more engaged in society and feeling good about themselves, which that just passes on and passes on and passes on to the next generation. So why wouldn't the government take funding? I mean, I'm not saying take more taxes and bring in more money. You could take funding right now that you're wasting on all the different administration levels and so on, and put that into hiring these people or outsourcing an organization like yours and saying, we're going to spend the next 5, 10, whatever years focusing in on these students to change this. Why don't you think they will do that?
Well, one of the challenges has been throughout the years that I've been on the task force and with the new government as well, is you get kind of a patronizing answer to that question. That's not how the funding model works. Sorry, that's not how the funding model works. And so it's the model, it's the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
So it's very
I
easy
know
just
you
to,
have to be careful. I don't. That's ridiculous. I
It
don't
is
have to be a
ridiculous.
character. They want to come after me. They tried when I was in politics. This is the problem with politics. They're so afraid of change. They're so afraid of having somebody else come in and tell them how to do it or prove them wrong that nobody is getting any further ahead except for those that are in government and the elected officials. So I'll say, I'm not saying that's what you want to say, but I'll say it is that this is ridiculous. To me, you would think that any politician that was really in it for the right reasons would want to save as many children as possible, because I
Mhm.
would. I would take salary from all, like I would find ways to reallocate funds to hire people to have and we started the show and I don't want to go on too much, but me telling you a story, my mom used to tell me how her and her brother would skip school. And then after a couple of days, a truant officer would show up and then they would be persuaded the way they persuaded them back in that day to
Yeah.
make sure that they went to school. And again, a very humble family, below the poverty line and working class. And they went back to school. She learned the hard way.
Hmm.
And I'm not suggesting that we do that. But what I'm suggesting is back then, at least people cared. I feel like we're not showing we care about these kids.
Yeah. I guess in my mind, like I talked early on about defining the problem clearly. And in my mind, and what the documentary shows as well, is that there's like a 5-year plan that we could work ourselves out of the problem that we're in right now. I really believe we could do it. And basically, you have to acknowledge if there's a school that's particularly struggling with absenteeism, you just have to designate that school as a school that needs additional support. And if you rework your funding so that you actually allow for outreach funding, and you might have to reduce the number of teachers that you have. It's just a sad fact, but I don't want schools to lose their funding. So I think there's actually lots of funding. Like when you look at the one example that I gave of 250 missing students at 3.9, well, if you took a portion of that funding and used it for outreach, you can actually solve this problem. So I know that the biggest challenge, like when I've been talking to politicians about this, is funding is tight, but I'm like, there's lots of money. There's lots of money, but you just have to think differently about it. And until we ring a bell and call this an emergency, we'll continue to dabble on the edges and play around with this problem. And I hear your heart. And in the end, as you've said over and over, it's kids, it's somebody's future, and so it's time that we break the model
Well, how do we
that we
expect kids to take care of us as we age if we won't take care of them now?
yeah. No, it's really an investment in the future, and it's very short-sighted to say, we're just continue along this path. It's not working, but we're just going to continue along this path, and so we need some drastic changes.
Well, look, I applaud your work. I know Sel Burrows. For those watching, he's just a community advocate in Winnipeg. He's not a paid salary position. He's not an executive director of anything. He's Sel Burrows. He cares about people. He cares about the community, and he's trying to get things done. Much like yourself, Kent, you're doing a wonderful job there, and I look forward to seeing this film. Where and when can people, at least in Winnipeg, see it?
Well, tickets are available as of today. If they go to icya.ca, there's a little link to click, and you can see the trailer for the documentary, and you can get your tickets. And I will tell you, they're selling out, and we have 500 seats, and so I'd encourage your listeners to get right on it and join us on October 1st. What's going to happen is there's going to be a showing of the documentary, and then I'm inviting people to a panel so that the media can ask questions, and that the audience and that there's going to be somebody on the panel who's struggled with attendance, and she's going to be able to speak to some of the questions that maybe the wider audience has. And so it's going to be the kickoff to hopefully a very, very big changes in education here.
That's great. Are you planning to put it on YouTube or anything afterwards?
Well, there's been a lot of interest to put this thing into film festivals, and there's quite a bit of the people that have reviewed it are really interested. We're hoping maybe we can get it on a streaming platform that goes national, and so we're trying to figure that all out. it's kind of build a plane as we fly it.
Yeah. Well,
And
hey, listen, we spend billions of dollars on CBC. Where are they? They could put it on, for goodness sakes.
I'll ask you to put a plug in for me, Kevin.
Don't know if they'll listen to me, but I'll do whatever I can. I mean, I'll appeal to Prime and to Amazon and to all of them. This is you're always looking for Canadian content. This would be good Canadian content that would do wonders in helping, not only thousands of children, I think, in Winnipeg and Manitoba, but all across this country and probably well into the United States. Kent, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your perseverance and for your dedication to this and your passion. We need more people like you. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegssun.com for more.